Everything you think you know about owning a home in America is about to change. And Texas just fired the first shot with $51 billion. If you own a home in Texas or Florida, your 2026 tax bill is about to look nothing like your 2024 bill. And the governor of Florida just went on camera in his State of the State and called property taxes perpetual rent to the government, signaling what could be the largest property tax elimination push in modern American history. We're going to show you exactly what Texas already pulled off, what Florida is about to do, and the one fiscal time bomb buried inside both plans that almost nobody is talking about. Because if you miss what's happening in the next 18 months, you're going to be on the wrong side of the biggest wealth shift in American housing this decade. Stay with me. Texas just implemented the most aggressive property tax reforms in state history, committing $51 billion over 2 years to tax relief, roughly 15% of the entire state budget, while Florida prepares to go even further with a 2026 ballot push to eliminate homestead property taxes entirely. The centerpiece? Texas Proposition 13 was approved by voters in November 2025, raising the school homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000 and giving seniors and disabled homeowners a combined $200,000 exemption that eliminates school maintenance and operations taxes entirely for the average Texas senior. These reforms arrive as Texas property owners still face the seventh highest effective tax rates in the nation at roughly 1.3 to 1.5%, well above the national average below 0.9%, despite Texas having no state income tax. And here's where that time bomb I mentioned starts ticking. These reforms represent both unprecedented relief for homeowners and serious fiscal risks that economists warn could destabilize state finances, because volatile sales tax and energy severance revenues are now constitutionally committed to permanent tax cuts. We're coming back to that. House Bill 9, effective January 1st, 2026, raises the business personal property exemption from $2,500 to $125,000 per location, effectively wiping out business personal property tax bills for the majority of small Texas businesses. And here's a fight that tells you how hard this actually is. Senate Bill 9, which passed the Texas Senate 19-2 in an August 2025 special session, would have further reduced the voter approval tax rate from 3.5% to 2.5% for cities and counties with populations exceeding 75,000. It died in the House. A replacement bill in a second special session was rejected 60-71, meaning the Texas legislature, which just passed the most aggressive property tax relief in state history, still couldn't get the city and county rate cap across the finish line. That tells you everything about how hard local governments are fighting back. Meanwhile, House Bill 30 takes effect in 2026. Significantly narrowing the disaster loophole that previously let local governments hike property tax revenues by 8% without voter approval following gubernatorial disaster declarations, a provision heavily criticized after Harris County's post-disaster rate hikes. The financial impact varies dramatically by property value and location. For the average Texas home valued at $302,000, the reforms deliver approximately $490 in annual school property tax savings, while seniors with the full $200,000 exemption see average combined savings near $950 once rate compression is factored in. And according to the Lieutenant Governor's office, in roughly 492 Texas school districts where average home values fall below Florida, by contrast, is still in the ballot design phase. And this is where it gets wild. DeSantis is pushing for the 2026 ballot, and proposals floated by Florida Republicans have ranged from massively expanded homestead exemptions up to $500,000, even as high as $1 million for long-term senior owners, all the way to total elimination of non-school property taxes on primary residences. As a bridge, he formerly proposed $1,000 rebate checks for each of Florida's 5.1 million homesteaded properties. That rebate never passed. And the most aggressive House resolution, H.J.R. 203, which would have phased out non-school homestead property taxes over 10 years, actually passed the Florida House 80-30 in February 2026, but then died in the Senate when the regular session ended in March without a single hearing. Which means right now, as we speak, the only realistic path to a 2026 ballot amendment runs through a special session that opens April 20th. And even then, a February 2026 University of North Florida poll showed only 56% support for phased elimination, 4 points short of the 60% supermajority Florida requires to amend the Constitution. Within 18 months, two of the largest housing markets in America could look fundamentally different than they do today. And if Florida actually pulls this off, there is a math problem waiting on the other side that most homeowners have no idea is coming. Now, let me show you why this matters, because the headline numbers are one thing, but the details are where the real money moves. Start with who actually wins. The average Texas homeowner gets somewhere around $490 a year back, which is nice, but it's not life-changing. The senior sitting on a paid-off home in a modest Texas school district, that person just got their school maintenance and operations tax effectively zeroed out. According to the Lieutenant Governor's office, in 492 districts across Texas, nearly half of every school district in the state, the average home value is now below the $140,000 exemption threshold, which means for the typical homeowner in those districts, school M&O taxes could drop to zero. That's not a tax cut, that is a tax elimination for the people who need it most. Then there's the small business side, and this one flew completely under the radar. The business personal property exemption jumping from $2,500 to $125,000 per taxing unit, that is an enormous shift. If you own a restaurant, a trade business, a small shop with equipment and inventory, you are getting taxed every single year on the stuff you need just to operate. Starting January 1st, 2026, most of that tax bill is gone. That alone is going to reshape small business margins across Texas. Now, stick with me for the next 2 minutes because what Florida is about to try makes Texas look cautious. And the fiscal catch buried underneath Texas is the exact same trap Florida is about to walk into. This next part is where the real money is. And here's the catch nobody on the evening news is talking about. That $51 billion commitment, only a few billion of it is actually new relief. A big chunk is carrying forward cuts that were already passed in 2019, 2021, and 2023, which means Texas isn't just committing new money, it's permanently locking in old commitments, constitutionally locked in, forever. And it's being funded by two of the most volatile revenue streams the state has. Sales tax, which drops in a recession, and energy severance taxes, which swing with the price of oil and gas. Analysts at every Texan and multiple Texas fiscal watchdogs have been sounding the alarm on this for months. You cannot permanently replace a stable tax with volatile revenue without eventually running into a wall. The only question is when that wall shows up. Okay, let's get into what Florida is actually doing. Governor Ron DeSantis is not being subtle. Remember that perpetual rent to the government line I mentioned up top? That's his exact framing from his 2026 State of the State. And the reason it lands is because it's simple. If you really own your home, why does the government get to keep charging you every year under the threat of seizing the property if you stop paying? That argument has legs. He's made eliminating homestead property taxes the central battle of his fiscal stretch in office. And here's where things actually stand because I want you to understand the difference between proposed and enacted, and the difference between passed and became law. The Florida House Select Committee on Property Taxes has been grinding through proposals all through 2025 and into the 2026 regular session. HJR 203, the most aggressive joint resolution, which would have phased out non-school homestead property taxes over 10 years, actually passed the House 80-30. But it never got a single hearing in the Senate. When the regular session ended in March 2026, it died. No broad elimination is in effect, but the machinery is absolutely not shutting down. There is a special session opening April 20th, and the 2026 ballot is still the target. Now, here's the part that should make every Floridian lean forward because the Florida Policy Institute already ran the math, and the number is staggering. Eliminating all real property taxes in Florida would blow a hole of between $43 and $55 billion a year every year. Because property taxes currently fund around 18% of county revenue, 17% of municipal revenue, and 50 to 60% of school district revenue. You pull that out, something has to replace it. And if Florida tried to replace it solely with higher sales taxes, they'd have to raise the state sales tax from 6% to somewhere around 12%. That would be the highest sales tax rate in the entire country. Every gallon of milk, every tank of gas, every tool at the hardware store, 12 cents on the dollar to the state. Public opinion reflects exactly that tension. A James Madison Institute poll found 46% of Floridians support eliminating property taxes outright versus 32% who'd rather cut sales taxes. But about 60% of those same Floridians are worried that killing property taxes would mean cuts to schools, police, and fire, which, based on the replacement math, is a very reasonable fear. And this is where we want to bring in the ghost at the table, California. In 1978, California passed the original Proposition 13. They capped property tax rates at 1% of assessed value, capped annual assessment growth at 2%, and local property tax revenue immediately dropped by 50 to 60% overnight. And in the 2 decades that followed, California fell from roughly 5th in the nation for per-pupil K-12 funding to about 47th, even after the state government stepped in with extra aid. Districts cut summer school, they cut adult education, they cut vocational programs, counselors, librarians, maintenance, things that don't come back easily. So the question hanging over everything Texas just did and everything Florida is about to do is whether they learned the California lesson or whether they're about to repeat it. The Texas answer so far has been, we'll use state money to replace the school revenue. We won't cap rates. We'll just shrink the taxable base through exemptions. Florida's answer is still being written, but the $43 to $55 billion replacement problem is real, and the sales tax math is ugly. And here's the part we need you to really pay attention to, because this isn't just a Texas and Florida story anymore. Whatever passes in those 2 states is coming for every other state you might live in, retire in, or move to next. Let me show you what's already in motion. Nebraska passed LB 34 in 2024, redirecting $750 million in state money to offset local school property taxes, rising to over $800 million by 2028. The activists behind the EPIC option had been gunning for the 2026 Nebraska ballot with a plan to abolish property, income, and inheritance taxes entirely by January 1st, 2028. But in March of 2026, they confirmed they couldn't get the signatures in time. So now they're regrouping for 2028. Michigan tried something similar last cycle with a campaign called Axe My Tax, spelled Axe M-I Tax, which would have prohibited real and personal property taxes completely. It failed to qualify for the 2024 ballot, but it is back, and as of early 2026, the group reported finishing signature collection for a potential appearance on the November 2026 ballot. And on top of all this, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously in 2023 in Tyler v. Hennepin County that when a government forecloses on a home for unpaid taxes and keeps more than what was actually owed, that's an unconstitutional taking. A 94-year-old Minnesota woman had her condo sold for $40,000 to cover roughly $15,000 in total tax debt. And keep in mind, only about $2,300 of that was actually unpaid tax. The rest was interest and penalties. The county kept the extra $25,000. The Supreme Court said no, and states across the country have been rewriting their foreclosure statutes ever since. So when I tell you there's a property tax revolution unfolding in real time across this country, I'm not exaggerating. I'm describing what is actually happening right now in state capitals from Austin to Tallahassee to Lincoln. Here's what this means for you, and here's the part I want you to really think about. If you own a home in Texas, your 2026 tax bill is going to be noticeably lower than your 2024 bill. If you're 65 or older, it may be dramatically lower. If you own a small business, you're about to see your business personal property tax essentially disappear. If you own a home in Florida, you're sitting on the edge of what could be the biggest property tax cut in state history. Or you could be staring at a 12% sales tax that hits renters, tourists, and working families the hardest. Watch the 2026 ballot carefully. Watch which amendments actually make it through the Senate. And if you own a home in any state that is not Texas or Florida, pay attention, because whatever passes in these 2 states in the next 18 months is going to be the template that every other state copies or avoids. The window is now. The policy is moving, and the homeowners who understand what is actually in these bills, not the headlines, the actual fine print, are going to be positioned very differently than the ones who aren't paying attention. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Every single one of these reforms in every single state is a transfer. Money is moving from one group of taxpayers to another, from property owners to consumers, from homeowners to renters, from locals to tourists, from the current generation to the next one. And the people who understand the direction of the transfer are the ones who win. Texas already pulled the trigger. Florida is loading the chamber. The rest of the country is watching. We'll keep tracking every ballot measure, every court ruling, and every budget fight as this plays out. So if you want the real numbers instead of the headlines, make sure you're subscribed. Drop us a comment and tell us if you could eliminate one tax tomorrow, property, income, or sales, which one would you pick? We read every single comment. And I'll see you in the next video.